Have you ever like applied for a job and no one ever got back to you?
Before I actually got the job that I have,
Yeah.
I had made over 60 applications.
Oh my God.
I
Yeah.
had made over 60 applications. Only 11% of those applications
Got back.
responded.
Yeah.
Only 11%. Because I had a Google sheet. The techie in me, the nerd in me, had a Google sheet of every position I applied for and the response, and I mean where I would want to reach out feedback for.
We are up. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Geo Habari podcast. I'm your host Yariwo Kitiyo, and I'm pretty excited about this new episode.
So this is part 2 of the career transitions and lessons learned. We promised to drop part 2, and so this is part 2 of that conversation. Still with Njeri. Hi Njeri, so happy to have you back.
Hi, May. Happy to be here and excited to dive into the conversation this time.
Thanks, Njeri. So I think for our start, we'd promised to take in questions, and thank you so much for guys who reached out to us on social media and on our Spotify page in the Q&A section. We'll address the questions towards the end of the episode. And then also thank you so much for guys who took the poll. We got really good response on this particular episode on guys saying that actually want more geo-focused conversations around career transitions. So yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, we left off in the previous episode where we talked about the role of candidates, how to negotiate your salary from our own personal opinions. And so this particular episode will start from the role of hiring managers to now how do you position your referees so that they're able to speak to your potential and what you've been working on. And Njeri talks about career capital as well in this part 2. Njeri, did I leave anything else out on what we'll cover as well in part 2?
No, I think that's primarily covers most of the topics. Obviously, viewers, stay tuned for the final bit where we answer some few questions around what to expect as an entry-level person in the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Njeri. And for guys who missed the previous episode, so we covered a couple of really interesting topics that were very insightful from our own personal journeys. And so if you haven't listened to that, please listen to that before connecting to this one so you can just connect the dots. So for a start, we'll go right into hiring managers. What's the role of hiring managers as well when it comes to ensuring that you're getting it right as well? You're not misleading candidates or you're not looking for what you don't really need. Like it's a very touchy subject as well.
Yeah.
But like, do you have any thoughts on that as well, on the role of the hiring manager as well?
Interesting. Yeah, actually I do because probably went through like a fire crash course 101 with my most recent hiring. And one thing I would say, maybe just starting off with the very basic, as a hiring manager, most often hiring managers are what we call generalists in the industry. They don't have an in-depth knowledge of probably the position they want to hire for. That there's a business need, and that's why you're getting someone, because you're not an expert in it. So if, let's say, you're a hiring manager who needs a geospatial developer, a data analyst, and a data engineer, you're not going to have the full skills of this. So you need to do your research into what kind of skills does the tech industry dictate these people to have.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that industry, what skills as a company do you now need from that? So, and the reason I'm saying this is because there's a very huge problem a lot with mismatch between the job description or specifications or what a hiring manager puts out there as the candidate they want versus the actual candidates they get who are applying. And if there is a mismatch in what you want and what the people out there know as this job position in the tech industry, then you will not get your correct candidates. And hiring managers need to take responsibility where they fall short there, in the sense that they need to, because a lot of times you'll find in very big companies, it may be thrown out to a recruitment team that probably does not even understand what a data engineer or a geospatial developer, say, for example, does. And so they will just do a quick Google search and put in their specifications, and they're not necessarily sure whether this is going to achieve the organization's needs. So they need to do that research, need to have the right type of specifications asking there, so that even as a data engineer who's applying, I know when I'm applying for this specific company, as a data engineer, my main work here is only for ETL pipelines. and maybe automations. But I am not required to do database administrative type of work. I am
Yeah.
not required to do networking type of work. I'm not required to do ABCD, which maybe I may think I may need to do, And so it's so important for there to be a match, for at least in terms of hiring, to actually
Yeah.
get the right candidate. The other thing is also to have a proper plan. If you're advertising for like 1 week and then hoping the tech assessment period will be like, maybe you're doing assessments will take, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then you want to hire within a month.
Yeah.
You have to be a bit realistic with how you plan yourself, because also the platforms for advertising, because you might choose certain platforms that give you a poor quality pool. If I'll give an example, and not to tarnish any company, it's just there are some companies that have this very easy applying one click button application. And so candidates there are just applying for the sake of applying, and they'll probably not read through the description as much. They'll just see data engineer, maybe the location they're hiring for and the salary, and then they apply.
Yeah.
And then you end up realizing you have like 200 candidates, and 80% of those candidates didn't even fully read the job description. And so when it comes to the shortlisting, when you're reaching out to these candidates, they're not even interested in the job anymore. And so it's also choosing the correct advertising tool or path or place that you're going to advertise, as well as choosing a right amount of duration depending on the type of pool of candidates you want to hire is also very, very crucial. I think those are key mistakes we make as hiring managers that would like determine a lot in terms of the overall output. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think for me, the other thing I'm also realizing, and that's like from past experiences, is like, have you ever like applied for a job and no one ever got back to you? I feel like that's the one thing I really would want to change. And like hiring managers should really take that up in the sense that if a candidate didn't qualify, I feel like it really goes a long way. I mean, there's different pools, right? There's like maybe phase one, it can just be a rejection, right? But I feel like towards the end, where it's like several candidates who've remained and they've made it to sort of maybe the third phase or the fourth phase of whatever categories you have within the interview process, I feel like it's very important for hiring managers also to give feedback, because it really helps the pool you're getting. For someone to know, oh, okay, I missed this job because I fumbled in phase three and I didn't submit, or my script didn't look optimal, or my code wasn't clean. And like, I know that's like a long stretch, but it would be impossible for you to do it for all 500 candidates who've applied. It would just be maybe a reject or all that. But like for candidates who've gone a step further and they're way ahead, like maybe top 10 or top 5,
Yeah.
I think that's something that I would want to see more.
Yeah.
I think that really helps, because I think I'm just reflecting on like all the jobs I
All the
applied
jobs
for,
you've
and
applied.
and no one ever told me. Like,
Trust.
it was just like, oh
Yeah.
wow, like
Trust. Because before I actually got the job that I have,
yeah.
I had made over 60 applications.
Oh my god,
I
yeah.
had made over 60 applications. Only 11% of those applications
Got
responded.
back. Yeah.
Only 11%. Because I had a Google sheet. The techie in me, the nerd in me, had a Google sheet of every position I applied for and the response, and I mean where I would want to reach out feedback for. I would also say, for those applying, take it upon yourself to actually ask for that feedback.
I like that.
Because there are some companies, like I will say, for example, with my hiring structure, that with every shortlisting will write a certain comment for that candidate, whether it will be proficient in database administration but lacks skills in I don't know, ETL workflows.
Yeah.
So we'll write a quick comment, even if it's one sentence.
Yeah.
But it will help us gauge what we were thinking about this candidate when we decided to reject them. And so when you ask for that feedback, more often than not, which is like, for example, some companies do it. It depends on the data policies of different countries. But like, we would keep such data for a maximum of up to 6 months. And then if you can reach out within that 6-month period, you'll probably get a response that is way more useful for you than if you're just to keep quiet and not saying it, not even ask. So sometimes, take initiative. Take
And
initiative.
ask. Okay.
Yeah.
I want us to get to unpopular opinions. What do you mean you don't know any?
Wait, let me explain. By unpopular opinions, I mean the things that you sort of got into the industry thinking, and then now as head of systems, that has really changed. And for me, why I think that's really important is, I think for me, I had several unpopular opinions because I was coming from, I have a geospatial background, by extension, by like my first job and what I currently do. And so my transition was very geospatial roles, and then that transitioned into like head of data. And so for me, I had like those things where I was like, oh wow, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. And for
Yeah.
me, I think the biggest one was like that thing for like data is data. Geospatial data is not actually like a separate thing that is in a bubble by itself. Like, I think for me that was like the most shocking thing when I like got out there, and like even my transition into head of data is when you realize, oh wow, like I'm not head of geospatial data.
Yeah.
I'm head of data.
Exactly.
And that's what for me that was, I think that's been like the biggest unpopular opinion for me. And that's, and why that is important is just being able to acknowledge that is that thing for like tech is tech. It's not you're not like on that further corner, and like you're now like the special project that's like, oh, your work is just this, and you don't sink into all these other workflows. So yeah, I think for me that was the biggest eye opener. Like from where I was coming from, it didn't feel like that. It felt like there was data, and then now there is geospatial data. So
Geospatial, gist data. I like, I like that thinking because it opens up your mind to stop limiting yourself, even when you're applying for jobs and when you're
yeah.
looking for things. There's a reality where when you're learning it in, whether it's in Cambodia Spatial or GIS or in a course, that GIS looks like this mammoth of a thing that is so different from the actual data. But the only difference is that it has spatial coordinates.
Yeah.
And obviously, there will be additional functions, maybe at the database level, that supports that's those spatial stuff. But beyond the spatial functions, working with it, it's in a maybe relational database, is the same type of data you would work with that was a tabular CSV type of data in that same database. They're just rows and columns of information that you need to manage.
Yeah.
End of story. And for me, when you point that out, it's so important because it's about like when you're creating solutions or products, or when you're showing the impact of work, without focusing on the fact that it's geospatial, you can speak more to the impact of the work and like what is the actual output and what are the deliverables. But when you focus too much on geospatial, it quickly distracts the customer or the end user, and they're trying to understand what is this geospatial thing, but they're not understanding what value you're bringing because they are really, really caught up in
In what is
GIS. What
this?
is
What
this
are you saying?
GIS?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of like maybe solutions out there, like they fall short, like the geospatial infrastructure for land information system, blah blah blah, that does this. And first of all, the people you're presenting to are normally stakeholders who don't even understand these tech jargons, and trying to just understand that takes away from the actual solution you're providing for them. And then you lose yourself.
Yeah.
You lose leverage. I really love that point. Data is data.
Data.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you having a geospatial background, like, do you think there's any influence from your background that transcends into what you currently do, and it sort of shapes your thought process when you're handling your systems?
Being that I have not been a head of systems without a geospatial
Yeah.
background, like I wouldn't really know what that would have looked like. But what I can say is that, like when coming up with solutions or when creating certain products, it obviously shapes the knowledge in the fact that when a client asks for something or asks for a deliverable, based on what they're asking, it's very easy to quickly grasp whether this data will actually be easy to deliver um, directly as just like outputs of dashboards, charts, and all that, versus if they actually want, now in the data is data, now on the reverse, on
Yeah.
the on the reverse of that, versus if they actually want spatial related outputs, so like they want maps or flow maps showing, like in my, let me give an example of where I work, where flow is showing supply chain from the source, maybe where weapons are manufactured, to the end user, how they found themselves in the hand of illicit people, and you're mapping out that flow. That kind of drawing and that kind of structuring
Yeah.
already tells me that the type of data required here will be either like polygons, points, and different types of data structures that are not just tabular data structures. And I think it's important to have that knowledge, because I've sat in places where people want deliverables, they want maps, they want ontology diagrams, or they want graph analysis, they want dashboards. But it's so important to understand that the databases that hold these different types of data will have to be structured differently. And you can't ask for all these things with just providing this one CSV.
Oh yeah.
And so having that geospatial knowledge has kind of helped me kind of restructure the thinking of from the end user first. Like,
Yeah.
what is your output? And when I see that output, what you actually want, then I can start figuring out how can we architect for that. Do we need graph databases?
Yeah.
Like, do we need spatial graph databases
Yeah.
to be able to handle that? Do we need relational database, or is a standard tabular based CSV enough for that kind of work?
Yeah.
I don't think I would be able to see that kind of vastness if I didn't have my geospatial background,
Yeah.
at the very least, as well as also having a bit of understanding of um, data solution architecting and data visualization, which I took as part of my geospatial background.
Yeah.
Like, it's so important to understand the end user's goal, to tell them, okay, by the way, this data you provided for us cannot necessarily achieve that,
Yeah.
but we can manipulate it, we can re-engineer it into these other types of things to offer you the output.
So it's an added advantage.
It is an
in the way
added
that
advantage.
It gives you the vast
It is an added advantage.
what you're looking
It's
at.
like, I would say, like, for example, somebody who is a computer scientist and learns about GIS or geospatial data, and learns the software of geospatial, has a higher advantage in some of this architecture or knowledge compared to one who has no knowledge of geospatial at all. Yeah.
There's something you mentioned when you were just starting out on how you build yourself
Position
as an
yourself.
asset. I think that's very important. And you talked about like what that means. Like you briefly mentioned on I think certifications and
Yeah.
some courses. And so I think I'd want you to, are you able to sort of put that into more words
Yeah.
for guys who are thinking of, I want to
So
get
how
it to
do
the
you-
next level. How do
yeah.
I do this? How do I become an asset? How do I get up that corporate ladder in a much better way than I have been doing, basically?
No, I think let's discuss that, because it's so important. One, because the industry out here is asking for 10 years experience
Oh yeah.
for entry level jobs. And I know it's very daunting for people who has just graduated and they're trying to position themselves, and then it's like, how do I become of value to this company?
Yeah.
How do I create my asset? And I like to call it, in my personal way of like investment, because I also love finance and all that, I love to call it building your own career asset, or your career portfolio. Yeah, your career capital. I borrow this heavily from a very nice broadcast that I usually follow. I think it's on Tech Careers, and he talked of, from let me try and remember that name. There's a book written by Carl Newport, So Good They Can't Ignore You, where he talks about how to build your career capital, and to look at it in three ways. Your career capital is based on your education, your experience, and your results. And so how do you become from what you are to an expert?
Yeah.
It's that triangle of building my education, so the skills that I'm learning. And then how do I improve on those skills is you putting it into practical work, into your experience. So projects, volunteer job, consultancy, employment. So that's the experience part. And then the results. So you have to show, based on the skills that you've learned and the practical experience that you've done, what results you're actually getting from that. So building that triangle is now building your kind of career
Yeah.
capital. And um, you don't have to necessarily look at experience as having to go to work for a company.
Yeah.
You can look at it as you gain certain skills in front end development, you worked on specific projects, and you can do those individual projects, or you can volunteer for like organizations. There are a lot of organizations out here that maybe, for example, need websites or things like that.
Yeah.
So you can create certain discrete projects and use that as an experience, and then the results is that you actually have those projects to show for them. So you're actually building an expertise even without necessarily
Having a job.
having
That's
a
really
job.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of it can stem from the very basis of your master's thesis.
Oh yeah.
So, like for example, the job I currently have is because I positioned my master's thesis in a very deliberate way. My thesis was very much focused on flow mapping. My company is focused on flow mapping for
For
weapons
weapons, yeah.
data, and so I polished up that thesis, and I took it that I learned this particular courses and skills in my master's. I took those skills and created this project for my thesis masters. And then I polished it up and packaged it in such a way that this project was my experience and this is the result of it. And you can also look at so many other small projects that you do in school. Obviously, organizations want to see a lot more than just like projects from school and all that, but that's a starting point.
Yeah.
Especially for entry level jobs, at least it puts you, it sets you aside from the people who will just write their masters, their undergraduate, and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you'll have some. You'll set yourself at a higher value when you're actually now showing your results through the projects that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how to build this triangle of your career capital?
Yeah.
Because it's like you have certain skills, but you're wondering like, how do I get them to expertise? And Carl Newport talks about the 3 I's before the E, which is you have to do an inventory and assessment of the skills you have. You invest in building more skills, or in building the skills that are not yet at the level you wish them to be, and test them.
Yeah.
And then you illustrate and tell with the results. So you tell of the work that you've gotten from this skill. So I would start with like inventory and assessing. Do a list, a dump of your skills first, all the skills you have. And then inventory and assessment, you now do an assessment and get an objective assessment. You can get that from, if you're working, your line manager or supervisor. If you're in school, your supervisor for projects.
Yeah.
If you have colleagues within the same level and industry. So get an objective assessment from the community or the people around you, of which of these skills they feel you're very strong at. But then also go a step further to do certain tests and certifications.
Yeah.
And this puts you ahead. So like, for example, if you're so much in the geospatial industry, and you think Esri is a very useful tool, then get some Esri certifications. If you think AWS, get some AWS Cloud Practitioner, AWS Database Specialist certifications. Some of these certifications do take time, but building on those are very important. So, okay, you've done your laundry list and now you're assessing where they are. Now, the next thing is, once you've identified which ones are your strongest and which ones do you still need building in, ask yourself, where do you want to go? So, maybe I'm a geospatial developer, but I want to transition into being a spatial data analyst. What skills do I not have that are in my inventory list that I need now to build, that I need to bring in? And that now goes to the next step of invest and test. So now you always look for the skills of where you want to go next.
Yeah.
Not where you are, not in the job you are, because the job you are, fine. You can build on the skills, and you can build based on, because some companies actually do offer like learning and development budget, and you can use that. But be very strategic. If you're planning to exit that company, for example, where the type of job you think you want, start putting yourself or positioning value to your company as to why that skill is also important to where you are right now, so that they can pay for you
Oh yeah, for that learning.
for that learning.
Yeah.
So now this is the invest and test. So now you're asking the company to invest on you in this, and it may not be to transition to another company. It may also to be to go
Within
up,
that,
up,
a vertical.
vertical. Like for example, in my case, I was I entered in on entry level. And then I positioned myself as to why it's important for me to learn project management skills, and similar skills that are more of management type position.
Yeah.
And once I invest in that skill, or I tell my company I'm interested in this and they invest in me, then when they're actually thinking of filling in a management position,
Yeah.
and they want to just hire internally, then they will consider me because I already have
They've
invested
already
in some
invested.
of,
Yeah, it's a
in
return
some
on
of these
investment
skills.
for them. Yeah.
So invest and assess. And it's so and then the next thing after investing and testing is now use these skills practically, dump them into some projects, everyday life. Say for example, now the project management skills I was working with tech partners, and I was trying to see how I can implement one of those skills in our everyday projects. And once you're starting to implement them, you can start documenting them. It's so important. A lot of people don't do this. You need to always document the work you're doing and the results you're achieving and the impact it has.
That's very important.
That's
for your
very
appraisal
important.
and
That's
for your inventory,
for
like what
everything.
you said.
For your
everything.
appraisal.
Yeah.
For when you're shifting to a new job and you've forgotten the impact you had in certain projects. For so many different things in your career trajectory, it's important to always document them.
Yeah.
And this is now the illustrate and tell part. How do you illustrate the work you've done? How are you engaging the impact of your work? And if you're able to do that, then you will have fulfilled the full
entire
triangle of building that specific skill, and you move to the next skill and the next skill. And I would say, like a lot of people, it's important to just take some time and sit down and first do that laundry list to just see where they are. Because in hiring, more often than not, when it's that general type of hiring, one of the first questions a hiring manager will ask is, how do you see yourself valuable to the company?
Yeah.
Almost always something similar to that.
Yeah.
That or something similar to that. And at the top of your head, you should be able to have in your mind, one, the research of what the company actually wants in that job role. But two, and very importantly, is your inventory list of skills and the skills that you're strong in that align with what the company wants.
Yeah.
And maybe the skills that you're not particularly that strong in, but you're developing because you're very interested in, because look, you're talking to a hiring manager who might actually be interested in investing in you. And so you're telling them that when I come work for your organization, my skills A, B, C, D. So my skills in geospatial development, my skills in data mobile collection, my skills in backend development are very strong and they align with your company. However, I'm also particularly interested in ETL workflows, which I have started. So you have to show obviously that you have interest and you started doing some work in it. But I would like to see growth in that with your organization.
Yeah.
And that way, as a hiring manager, I can already see you have structure, you have depth, and you also even want to grow
The
further.
future, yeah.
You even want to grow to the future. So in a nutshell, you need to build from where you are to expertise. You need education or building that skill. And then that education, you need to kind of put it into some experience, a project, a work experience or the like. And then you need to be able to tell your work. You need to be able to show the results. And if you can do that, then you can have a very strong way of positioning yourself as a valuable asset. And you don't necessarily have to have all the work of experience. You just need to be very strategic.
Yeah.
Because when hiring also, a lot of people say this, that you need to help the interviewer interview you easier, like it's better, like a hiring manager doesn't need to struggle to get these skills from you, like tell me more, tell me about your work experience in this, tell me about this and that. They shouldn't struggle too much to ask all these things out of you. You should have already had that laundry list, and you can position it in such a nice way that it becomes your elevator pitch. So you can position your laundry list in such a way that this is your elevator pitch for this specific position.
Yeah.
And if you want a different type of job you're looking for, this is your elevator pitch for spatial data analysis. This is
Yeah.
your elevator pitch for geospatial development. And put in those particular skills, and put in those impact in the work, and even how you structure the work and the impact is so important, because organizations always think the customer is the most important, and then
Oh,
the
yeah.
company, and then maybe the division or department, and then
have
you
the
as a
employees,
person.
yeah.
So whenever you're giving out the impact of a certain work, talk about the customer success in that particular project. So let's say like you are doing a certificate registration and you created a land information system to help with that for a particular county, and you need to start with how you helped that county register 70% of its revenue or land or
service,
whatever
yeah.
records or whatever services you're working on, and that achieved the company's goal to be set at the forefront of being the main company that does registration for this type of
Yeah.
work, right?
Yeah.
And which internally achieved the objectives of your particular team, which was to create this efficient and effective information system that allows for this registration. So if you're able to tell of your results in such a manner, and that result is because of the skill you had in maybe front end and back end development, then immediately I see so much credibility in your skill.
Yeah.
And I already see you as an expert.
Yeah.
And you have just built that career capital through how you systematically give the impact.
Yeah. I like that. So what you're saying, and I really like that, is like there has to be a chronological flow.
Yeah.
Don't just talk randomly,
haphazardly
everywhere. Okay.
Because in interviews, a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
You ask a question and they panic.
Yeah.
And they go into, I would debug this by going straight into the task scheduler and seeing. I mean, start with a high level overview of like, I would first sit down and assess what is the problem.
Yeah.
And then now say the different steps of like, oh, I would reach out to the stakeholders who are affected. 2, I would now look into the technical aspects of it, which is now the debugging areas, and then you
Yeah.
can go in depth into that. 3, I would look at the impact or how it affects the business, how it affects the revenue.
Yeah.
So now you're not only seeing just this bug that caused your data services to fumble,
Yeah.
but you're actually seeing who are the affected people
Yeah.
at the end of it, your customers. How is it impacting the business goals and our revenue?
Yeah.
And also how is internally as staff members, how is it impacting them, and how do I make sure that they maintain confidence within me
Yeah.
to continue that I'm going to do this work and solve it. And then finally, now in the technical aspects of it, what is involved? What are the different strategic steps you will take to actually now look into the debugging? So I think a lot of people just go straight into panic mode and just talk without direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's important to have structure in everything you do, because that already puts you a step ahead in interviewing. Yeah.
And there's something else you'd mentioned in one of our offline chats, and I think that also really resonated with me, is referees, and where we go wrong when it comes to referees, and how you're positioning them and talking about the job you're applying for, right? And so how do referees play a key role in linking you to your next opportunity, or in making sure that they present what you're doing well to the hiring manager as well? I think that's something we also tend to overlook.
We overlook a lot, because the reality is when in Naitwangaje, foot comes to shove. What is that?
Push
phrase?
comes to
Push
shove.
comes foot.
Yeah.
Yeah. My English came with sheep.
Oh, it's not ours. It's
English
not
came
ours.
with sheep. When push comes to shove, you have 2 candidates remaining at the top 2.
Yeah.
And you've gone through all the different stages. And your tiebreaker at this point is just hearing from the referees.
Yeah.
Then they play a very key role in whether it will break or make you to actually get that job. And a lot of people just disregard it, or they just put referees for the sake of putting, and they don't have conversations with these referees in advance. And I would say it's so important for somebody to reach out to the referees to, and you don't have to be, what is the word for it, like blatantly direct that I have this job I'm applying for and I want you to say something good about me, because
Yeah.
then that's not objective. That's
Right.
yeah. So that's not actually, and that's actually quite wrong. But what one should actually position themselves is frequently discussing with these referees almost as a mentor type uh, position,
Yeah.
and tell them of what they're looking for, the things they're interested in. So, the different jobs they're applying for, and also make sure that they have information on their career capital. So, you need to tell them, so I'm skilled in A, B, C, D. I am still learning a lot around cloud infrastructure, but I'm very skilled in database administration and all this stuff. I'm really interested in looking for jobs that are around database admins or data engineering. So if you hear or know of such positions, please send them my way. I'm also applying for some. Because you've been a mentor through my journey, would you mind being a referee for some of these positions? And if you have a referee who's more like a mentor, who knows your skill building journey or your career capital or your day-to-day advancements, they will be at a better position to speak nice, to speak for you, like to speak
Yeah.
good things for you. And you find a lot of times, when you're reaching out to referees, they barely have a clue what these people are doing.
Yeah.
They only know one specific, very niche project which had only two skills.
Yeah.
And when you ask them around any other thing, they can't really speak to it. And unfortunately, then it doesn't help the hiring manager.
Yeah.
Because the hiring manager needs to know, does this guy have, in the day-to-day work, does he do cloud engineering, does he do database related work, does he do automations, does he do ETL workflows? And then when you're talking about all of this to the referee, they have no clue.
Yeah.
They're only like, oh no, he only did this for us.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that then restricts the hiring manager. And like, I'm not too sure
Yeah.
if what he says about all these other things
is
actually
true
hold
or,
weight.
Yeah, the credibility.
Yeah, but if he was a mentor, he'd be like, he did this specifically for us, but I know he's done projects in this
This and
because
this.
you showed and told your mentor.
Yeah.
I know he's been very interested in learning more about ETL workflows. I know he's been very interested in spatial analysis or going into the geospatial direction. I know he's done data mobile collection tools. He knows. He's
Yeah.
not necessarily
Yeah.
like knows the in-depth of it, but he knows because you told him. And that's the important thing. So it's to keep our referees close as mentors.
Yeah.
I would say that's a key advice, to keep our referees close as mentors. But also, like, a lot of companies will require a current employer as a referee.
Oh yeah.
And so to spot if your line manager can be that person for you. I mean, sometimes because of toxic work
Yeah. Or
places,
conflict of interest.
or conflict of
Yeah.
interest, that may not work. But to spot someone in your
Yeah.
current employment who can be that for you, and you don't have to tell them you're looking for jobs outside. You just need to tell them that's the areas you're trying to build yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
As simple as
Oh,
that.
thanks, Njeri. Guys, I hope you found this insightful. And Njeri, thank you so much. This was very resourceful
This
and
was also
insightful.
quite
I love this
insightful for me.
conversation.
Yeah,
I've
'cause
loved it.
I have never really thought of myself as a manager, but now finding myself kind of thrown into that position, having this kind of conversation makes me think deeper about what I'm actually doing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we just feel like we don't, all of us
You don't know what you're doing. Yeah.
But for me, it's also quite insightful and eye-opening to actually think through my steps and my role, the role that I play in other people's lives.
Yeah.
Because the questions you've asked me a lot are from the end of somebody who wants to get into the industry, or the advice for the people who are like myself as younger selves. But I'm like I'm caught in between the fact that oh this and I'm now on the other end of that table,
Yeah.
and these are the people who
Who
now
are.
are trying to join in,
Yeah.
and like what role do I also play there, and
Yeah.
like how can I make it easier for that person to have that career growth that they
Yeah.
want in their
Yeah.
lives, and also for my own career growth,
I know.
because
Yeah.
I'm not reaching the
The
end of it.
yeah.
Yeah,
This has been very helpful, and like I think one of the other things, and for guys, and why we are calling this the yeah, we're calling it the Millennial Edition. It was really for us. It was really why we thought this is important. Is just like and you realize like really been focusing on like our journey and our transition through it. And some of the and why I thought this conversation was important when I was talking to Njeri is like when you're looking at where we've been and sort of the information we probably wish we would have had or we should have been like given access to. I think that this was very pivotal for us to have and just talk about. And so this is really our view of how sort of navigated through the industry. We're still learning. I
we're
think Jerry
still
said that
learning. We're
we're still
still
learning.
learning.
It's a journey.
Take
And
everything with a grain of salt.
for real. Yeah.
Reshift it towards your own needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's very important. And yeah, I think also we are very open to please reach out to Njeri. I'll put in all the resources Jerry has mentioned, the podcast where she got the snippets from the Career Capital. I think that was very insightful, even
Very
for
insightful.
myself.
Yeah.
So I'll put in all those resources. I'll put Jerry's LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. Yeah, we can connect.
So we're definitely happy to help. I don't want to call ourselves big sisters because we are not that old. But yeah, we're definitely happy to help where we can. So yeah, feel free to reach out as we try to create a safer space that's more informative and more useful for everyone coming behind us and for those who are ahead of us as well. If we can also reach out to them. So yeah, we're really trying to build this community and through this career capital and how our lives can transition in the tech world, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to help, happy to be a mentor or to help anyone who needs to reach out to my LinkedIn. And yeah, happy to be at Geo Habari podcast. Really great stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Njeri. So yeah, some of the questions we got on our social media and Spotify page. Thank you so much, guys, for the guys who took the time to key in their questions and even guys who voted. We got a really good poll from people, just as the question we had on should we have more conversations that are geo-focused around career transitions and lessons learned. So thank you for guys who took up that poll as well. Thank you so much. I'll read the question that came through our Spotify page. So the question was, what should I expect for my first job after graduation in terms of industry experience, payments, etc. So that was the question. Thank you so much to whoever asked this question. So yeah, Njeri, that was the one of the questions that came through. What should I expect for my first job?
I mean, that's an interesting question that all of us probably posed to ourselves when we started out. I think there are two ways we can really dive into it, May, because probably not sure if the viewer wanted to take a deep dive into what the company expects of them or what they should actually expect to receive from the company. So maybe we can look at both angles. And maybe we can start off with looking at the side of the company. I mean, you are a fresh graduate out of campus, probably an undergraduate in this case, and you are seeking to join maybe, let's say, for example, a geospatial analyst role, developer, so on and so forth within the industry. And as a hiring manager, there is a level of um, expectation from you to at least have the basic required skills that you gain from your training or your school education or your courses used in some sort of practical way. So, not just having like an academic background and not just having certifications and training courses there, but then actually showing some practical examples of that use. So, think of it like thesis, the freelance projects you do out there, some internships or volunteer work, anything that can relate to showing that you adapted some of those skills somewhere. I think that's really key to see that you can be somebody who will now take whatever you learned academically and implement it within that organization. I think a second thing that would be useful is to also kind of indicate, maybe during the face-to-face interviews, your ability or your appetite to want to learn more, so that from the perspective of the hiring manager, they want to see the readiness to grow and to adapt whatever skills are required for that specific role. And not just adapt it for the organization per se, but then to also see in which direction you want to level up or you want to scale up. And that now dives into the second discussion of from the perspective of yourself, like what will you expect from the organization. Do you have some additional points around that before we jump into this other direction?
I think I'd mainly say those ones. What I'd probably add onto the first point you made on like you also just linking the skills you're getting from school and the practicality to it. Maybe an example would be, for example, if it's immediately from school and you're getting into a geospatial company, and I'm assuming it's probably an entry level job in a maybe it's like a data. I'll probably use an example for some of the roles I had when I was just getting into the field immediately from school. My role was not technical at all. It probably had technical bits, but it wasn't. I did not have the company did not have an expectation of me to sort of know tools. But the advantage, or maybe the advantage of what stood out, is I had already used some of the tools the company I was going to had, and that sort of stood out in my CV, in the sense that I already knew, because in school I'd already probably used a couple of tools that were linked to this particular company or organization. So then that makes you stand out. So it's just adding on to that, on like the practicality of that. So if it's like a GIS entry level job, then like you should know at least basic tools like how to create a map on ArcMap or on ArcGIS Pro or on QGIS, how to create maybe a PDF, like just basic skills really. I wouldn't really panic about the advanced skills really. It's just normally a way to see like how have you tried learning by yourself? Have you tried doing maybe the certificates, the free courses for you to know that? I'd maybe just say that, just showing practicality in what you've done in school and some of the things you've mastered.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Maybe I can add a small point to that. I'm not sure how necessary it may be, but then there is some leverage and advantage in putting yourself out there. Now, I know not everyone is like an extrovert who's posting on social media like May here with Hajio Habari, but it's useful to have some level of interest in your industry. Say, for example, take those who you don't have the experience yet, but then on LinkedIn, you're posting thoughts and ideas or around maybe certain concepts in the industry. Maybe there's something that intrigues you that is an emerging technology, and you have like a snippet posts of how that interests you. Such kind of small initiatives actually capture the attention of like people who are hiring, and it sets you aside from just any other entry level person, because it makes you look like somebody who's actually thought more into that industry than just somebody who's trained under some academia courses. So I think that may also just be like a added tip if you're really looking to like put yourself out there and you don't have the experience, and maybe you don't have the ability to scale up in certifications because of how much it costs. You can just start your own things. I take, for example, here in Kenya, they're very, very skilled and interesting geospatial, I would say, programmers and developers who had been posting like blog posts around uh, topics or emerging trends, and they become like known in the industry just from that kind of work. That's just like an advantage.
Oh my God, yeah, I agree. I agree. That's a very good point as well. Yeah, I like that. And then now the second bit, Njeri, is like what you are saying on like the other bit of it, which might be now there's what the question, like the two-part side of it, like what you're expecting and then what they expect from you. That was the second bit of it, right? The other side of it.
Yeah, I think in the other, I mean, when you look at the other perspective, it's like you've now gotten into this entry level job. How do you make it work to your advantage, and basically achieve your own expectations? So there's what um, I believe is very crucial for the initial stages of joining any company, maybe during the onboarding process, maybe during the hiring process, at whatever level it is to have some expectation level setting with your line manager. If, for example, you're joining in with skills in geospatial development, but you want to further enhance the front end skills to become really somebody who's good in data visualization. Maybe you want to make ontology mapping, graph analysis, you want to do some flow mapping. It would be really crucial for you at the very beginning to say this is your area of expertise, this is what you've learned so far, but you're really interested in upskilling in these other areas. And that way, your line manager can start aligning some of your duties and responsibilities towards upskilling in that area. And that way, by doing an expectation setting, you allow yourself to grow based on your own demands and grow based on the direction you want to in like the career trajectory. Again, it's very important to understand that when you're joining, the main thing that you may gain is probably around learning and development and networking. And so if you're putting the expectation settings at the very beginning, the learning and development will be in tune towards your career growth. And the main thing that you'll probably be gaining from the company is skills that you gain either in terms of what the company uses or skills that you gain in terms of what the company is willing to invest in you. So maybe they can pay for you some courses, they can pay for you some certifications, but you need to set that for the line manager to be able to understand. Yeah, I don't know if you have thoughts around that, May.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And just linking it to like my personal journey would be like what you're saying. And I remember even when I was joining, one of the roles I had was like when I was joining, it wasn't really, it was a good role. But then after I joined during the what you're saying, like expectation setting, I think at that point is when I was really open to, telling like my supervisor, like I would really want to transition into a more technical role. I'd want to learn more and master to these tools and these languages and just be able to uh, take my career trajectory to this direction. Well, that was not what I had joined the company to do. But I like that you've said like being able to like expectation setting even for the environment where you're in, so they can help you thrive and grow in the role you actually
Yeah,
want to transition
yeah.
into. And so yeah, that really helps. That really helps in like just setting that tone and being intentional and just expressing that. So I think that's how my transition actually came into now the technical side of it. Let me use my example, because for mine, when I was negotiating for that and just putting that on the table, like I'd really want this when I was joining, and I was also very clear on this will not in any way affect my current role. I will still be able to perform my current role, but I want you to know that I'm willing to go an extra mile for me to transition into a more technical role or a more senior role or get into more client interaction. So whichever way yours might be, I'm just using that example. But yeah, that really helps when you're in tone setting and just creating that expectation for you and for your supervisor as well.
I agree because it was the same case for me. The company I joined, I'd say as my very first true job, I did offer like a list of, I had done my research before and I did offer a list of some of the certifications I thought were of interest to me. And I did that very strategically because those certifications were required to jump into a technical role that I was eyeing. And so along the way in the current role, I did some of those certifications. And then somewhere in the transitioning now, which is also the next point, I think, around networking and making relationships, is I managed to kind of have a conversation with a different department or a different line manager into seeing how I can transition into that department. And so even a key or important thing that you need to understand when you're joining is how do you network and how do you make key important connections or relationships with people that may help you progress in your career. And as an entry level person, networking may not necessarily mean going to conferences and meeting new people because maybe those opportunities may not be available for you, or maybe they're your work is very just back end desk related work, and you're not interfacing with stakeholders, so you may not have that opportunity. But it can also look like interacting and making relationships with other key people within that particular either industry or your company itself, into areas that you think you would be developing in. So like I joined in a previous employment, one of my first employments, I joined a sales department and a sales role, which to me did not align with exactly what I wanted to do. But in the certifications that I took up and in making relationships with the manager of the developer department, allowed me to transition more into a tech type of role, because they now saw that I've gained these skills through these certifications. I have an interest in that area, and I have a good relationship with that particular department or people in that particular department. And so it was a very easy transition to be pulled into that line, which was more of actually a promotion. And so these are things that you can do for yourself in order to be able to gain the most from an entry level position, because there's only so much you can gain, obviously. But at the very least, growing yourself and creating networks is very key.
Yeah. I really like that. Thanks, Jerry, for that example as well. And then there's the other bit of it, which is those expectation on like what the industry expects, and then there was the salary as well. And we touched on salary on the previous episode. I mean, on part two of this, I don't know if you have anything else to add or tips around that.
I don't know if I have more to add, because I think salary is very subjective to so many different variables, and it's not just like the things we discussed last time, which is like the where the company is located. So is it in Kenya or is it in Canada? Do they offer higher living standards? What's their current operating cost? Do they have the funds to be able to provide a certain salary for you? It's not just the budget they have. It's also not just their role, whether it's a senior, mid-level, entry position, but it's also referencing what you offer on the table. So, for example, if there are two people, one entry level with this right skills, and another so entry to mid level with the same skills, but has an additional two or three skills that may be relevant for the company, this second person may be able to have that prerogative to push the salary for a higher ask compared to the first person. So it's also very relevant to what skills you may bring into the company. And maybe I can give an example. If, like, say a company is hiring off the cuff here, like a data engineer or let's say a data scientist, to do basic insights generation. And in the future, in like the next 2 years, they have a need to move into using AI and machine learning models to provide better insights and create efficiencies in their operations. And if one data scientist comes in with additional skills in machine learning and AI, they may have the ability to give a higher ask. And at that level, a company may decide to increase its budget for this person, because in this case, they are gaining someone who has skills that will help their strategic position in the future, versus bringing someone in that they would have to actually spend their own resources to upskill them, which may cost them more probably. So it all depends with also what you're bringing to the table. I think it's quite variable. It's very hard to like give an exact figure into what we can say is the exact salary. And so I mean that's also goes back to the discussion we said of like, you reach to your community members. If you know people in companies you're interested in, you reach out to them, you find out the kind of salaries people pay, because it's very subjective. Yeah, I don't know what more
Yeah.
we can say to that. I know we have been called out before for being a bit too diplomatic with that kind of answer, where you never state the exact salary, but that's simply because from sitting from a hiring manager's perspective, it's there are too many variables that need to be taken into account, that you can't just give a figure, but then there can be ranges, and these ranges can, I mean, it depends on the position you're applying for. This ones, you can find information on that in the communities or online, or this kind of initiatives.
Yeah, and like in part one, I remember even the part where we were saying, like the different approaches that you can take in a situation where you really are trying to figure out what should I quote for, how should I approach it. So I don't know if that helps. I hope we've tried answering those questions, but we are definitely more open to sort of get in depth at a more personal level. Our DMs are open. Jerry's DMs are open. So yeah, we are always open to helping more and giving sort of more personalized, probably, I don't want to call it advice, but maybe a more personalized response based on your situation, and see if that will help. I mean, we're all trying to figure this out. So yeah, I'd say that I hope we've answered those questions for you. But yeah, if not, please reach out again. Please reach out to us. We'll definitely respond, even if it's not on a whole other episode. We've covered everything, Jerry. So yeah. Okay, that's the end of the episode, guys. Connect with us on social media. This will be up on Spotify. And so yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next episode, that's bye from Jerry and myself. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.